doing
Just Q&A today?
Yes.
No children, no animals.
Okay, gotcha.
No presentation. The contracts, obviously Commissioner Davis has been discussed at length here and so forth, but not the fire chiefs. I don't think has received as much attention. He's also getting, or was awarded a new contract today, and it has a severance clause. 75% of his salary if he is terminated without cause. Can you address all of that, why you thought that was necessary?
I think both contracts that were before the board today are consistent with past practices. They're both our public safety leaders. We want them focused on public safety, focused on their jobs, and not worried or out looking for another job. When you look at the quality of the work of the Commissioner Davis and Chief Ford, I think we're getting great deals for both of them. They're both very widely respected, and I think it's certainly, as I said, consistent with past practices.
But you were, obviously the concern about them, the other side of that story is that there's going to be a new mayor by December of 2016. These contracts run through 2020, which is a 4-year proposition. So you're essentially telling the next mayor, hey, you either keep them or it's a pretty high payout to get rid of them. Aren't you kind of handcuffing the next mayor?
I think you saying that it's a pretty high payout doesn't make it so. I think that Chief Davis and Ford severance were less than the past commissioners and chiefs. That's the fact.
Madam Mayor, can you speak on the allegations facing Mr. Graziano?
What allegations facing Graziano?
Well, as far as the women who have come forward alleging that...
He hasn't been accused of anything.
Are you satisfied with the job he's doing?
Let's back up. Are you saying that he's been accused of something? Is that what you're trying to insinuate?
I mean, it's happening under his leadership.
Okay, so what is your question?
Well, my first question is, what are your thoughts about the housing commissioner regarding these allegations?
Yeah, so we've talked about the allegations before. I think if the allegations are true, they're despicable and unacceptable. I also know that the commissioner, as the executive director of HABC, and the entire team at HABC, including the board, takes those allegations very seriously, and they're doing an investigation. I await the results of that, the investigation, just like everyone else does, because there is no excuse for that type of behavior. For someone in a position of power, when you are engaging or have a duty to provide a service for people, particularly at vulnerable times, to take advantage of that is despicable.
Some of these accusations date back to 2013. Can you offer an explanation as to why those incidents weren't investigated at that point?
I'm waiting for the results of the investigation to be able to comment on that.
But you don't have any plans of removing him?
Absolutely not.
Are you satisfied with the way he's handling the water issue at the other?
The water issue just underscores the importance of the work he's been doing. Baltimore City is a leader in our efforts to improve the structures of our high-rises with the RAD program. And we are a leader in pushing for those investments because we know that because the Housing Authority understands that these buildings are vulnerable for that type of service breakdown. When you have old buildings that are in desperate need of repair, this is what happens. So the fact that it happens underscores the need for the Housing Authority to continue to be aggressive in working to improve the conditions at the buildings throughout the city, because they're pushing hard for the private developers to work in partnership to make that done. If it had kept the regular pace of capital improvements, it would take 200 years to make all of the improvements that are needed. But it's on a much accelerated path because we are at the forefront in the country of pushing for that public-private partnership.
Do you have any thoughts on how the protests were handled on Monday night?
No.
Okay.
Have you been advised of safety violations in the balcony in the city council chamber?
What do you mean?
Well, apparently it was closed because of safety violations.
Safety concerns.
Safety concerns that it's in poor shape. Are you aware of any kind of citing of structural problems in the balcony?
I am not, but that doesn't mean the general services is not aware.
I did a story yesterday on a police officer by the name of Fabian Morande, who's a bit of a legend on the street of some of his behavior. But setting aside that, this is a guy who has been in the department for 14 years and has been named in at least 4 lawsuits and also named in other claims filed with the city, and is now suspended due to an off-duty incident in a convenience store, city business, in which his service weapon was somehow involved. And so we've talked over the last year and a half, as you've talked about holding accountable. How is it, I'm going to repeat the question that I've been asked since doing that story, how is it that an employee of the Baltimore Police Department is still employed with a record, a paper trail such as that?
So I'm sure you are familiar with my efforts to reform the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights. It was a pretty lonely fight during the past legislative session because I've asked those same questions. I want to be able to hold officers that have been found guilty of wrongdoing accountable for their actions, and there are several contractual or not even they're contractual things, but there's also things according to the law that really ties the commissioner's hands. And I'll continue to fight for changes and reform to the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights as we continue to press for reforms in the department overall.
Are you advised by the city law department? One of the problems, obviously, the challenge is that we see when the city pays a settlement of a lawsuit, which has happened more than once, obviously, we see the synopsis of the case, but we do not see the rest of the story. And that is, what happened to that officer? Was that officer sanctioned in any way? Was he disciplined? What are your thoughts on that? That is part of this debate of police reform, is to make more transparent that process. What are your thoughts about the way it's done in the city of Baltimore?
I definitely think we should look for ways to make it more transparent. Again, these are things that we have to fight for, that transparency we have to fight for with changes to the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights and the police contract.
One more, guys.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. On Friday, PG&E filed suit over the conduit rate increase. Do you have any reaction to that at this point? And kind of as a follow-up, what's the relationship between the city and PG&E like right now?
I think it's a decent relationship. I don't take it personally. They want to ensure that the conduit, the money associated with the conduit rate increase is going only for the capital improvement in the conduit system, which is what the law requires and what we have always stated would be the case. They've chosen to file a lawsuit in order to ensure that it's certainly not the path that I would have chosen, but I'm not surprised.
Do you expect to negotiate with them outside of the lawsuit after this, or is it just going to be, is the city going to fight the lawsuit?
I think it's too early to say.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.